The Rust Belt states playing a decisive role in Donald Trump's victory Tuesday as the Republican rode a surge in turnout among white working-class voters to break through Hillary Clinton's so-called blue wall in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. John Brabender is a Republican strategist and longtime advisor to former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum. So, sir, welcome back.
Happy to be here.
I have to say, you kind of called this one. Were you surprised by the magnitude of the margins in these states?
Not totally surprised. For one reason is I was doing a lot of races in these states. So I was seeing sort of micro polls, if you will, state Senate races, congressional races, and even some of the Senate races. And clearly there was one thing coming out. One is I did believe there was an undercount of votes in these polls for Trump. And the reason is if you're a union member, a blue-collar conservative Democrat,
right,
you're not necessarily going to tell somebody who you don't know on the phone that I'm voting for Donald Trump. And so I did believe that that was being underestimated. Number two is we were seeing a different enthusiasm level for pro-Trump voters versus pro-Clinton voters. And then there was one other thing. If you look at sort of the exit polls, and let's hope to God those are more accurate than the national polls were. If you look at those, there was one thing that people who were dissatisfied with government, the federal government, overwhelmingly went for Trump. What that says to me is Hillary Clinton became the incumbent in this race. It was not an open seat, and that means that if you're undecided or at the end, generally you go towards the non-incumbent. In this case, it was Trump.
Let's break down the state of Pennsylvania, which you know very, very well, and a Republican hasn't won that since, what, 1988? So a very long time. Now, how did Trump do it if you look at the state demographically? We talked for weeks about how he was struggling in the Philadelphia suburbs. How did he do there?
Well, he did better than expected. He didn't do great. So, for example, take Bucks County, which had a really highly contested congressional district.
That's Allentown,
the 8th congressional district.
North of Philly.
Right. Well, and so the Republican ended up winning by almost 10 points. In that district, the Senate candidate, Pat Toomey, I think, won about 5 points. Donald Trump actually lost it, but not by the margins that they thought he would. So he actually recovered a little bit in the suburbs of Philadelphia, the collar counties. But then in the West, he started to roll up big numbers. A good example is Erie County.
And that's in the far west near Ohio.
Right on the lake. And they have not voted for a Republican for president since 1984. It's over 60% Democrat.
Wow.
And Donald Trump won that county. And here's really the crucial part of this. You know, we talk about the gender gap, that Hillary was going to win big among women, Donald Trump was going to do well among men. Non-college educated white women voted for Donald Trump, I think on the national level, at 62%. In these Rust Belt states, he won by big margins among sort of these blue-collar, who are oftentimes conservative, but working mothers, in a sense. And I think that was the whole difference of the game, and I think as they do more analysis, they're going to understand that you cannot paint a broad brush and say, you know, here's how the female vote or the male vote's going to go. You have to look much more granular than that.
Is this a revival of the Reagan coalition of kind of blue-collar voters who used to be Democrats with the traditional college-educated Republicans?
Yeah, here's the interesting thing. These are the sons and daughters of what we would have called as Reagan Democrats.
Right.
And what's interesting is their votes are very fluid, and they have not become pro-Republican. Let's be clear on this. They think both parties have left them on the economic battlefield. They think both parties have let them down, and they think Washington is basically corrupt.
Right.
And so when Donald Trump is talking about trade and immigration and even Obamacare, these are music to their ears, and they resonated based on that. And the biggest strategic mistake I think Hillary Clinton made is she took these voters for granted.
Okay, so was there a turnout problem for her among minority voters, particularly in Philadelphia? Because it's usually in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh where they Democrats roll up the big numbers to overwhelm Republicans in the rest of the state. Was there a lack of enthusiasm for her there compared to Obama?
Well, I would guess there wasn't as much enthusiasm, but actually the votes were there. If you look at Philadelphia, coming out of Philadelphia, she did every bit as well as Barack Obama did. That was a big surprise. They thought that she had driven up enough numbers that she was going to win. Then in the collar counties, she didn't do as well as Obama, but she did okay. If you would have just looked at those numbers, you would have thought that she would win Pennsylvania by 2 or 3 points. But then you get into some of the swing areas. Johnstown, Pennsylvania, Erie that we discussed, the Scranton area, and even the city of Pittsburgh. Once you got outside the city of Pittsburgh, Allegheny County and the surrounding counties, Trump did extremely well. And then you get in these small rural areas and towns, overwhelmingly they voted for Trump, and it made up the big advantage that Clinton had coming out of Philadelphia.
All right, John, thank you. Fascinating stuff. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me back.